How's it going, everyone? We've just finished streaming, leveling up, and doing our builds for the Druid and Necromancer. I'm playing the Druid, and so many of you guys were asking to see my Druid build, because by the end of the stream I had a super powerful tornado-focused build for the Druid that is good against single targets and bosses, and it was so powerful that I've even just defeated the world boss with pretty much good ease. I didn't actually die once. We had a good team, and it just sort of melted. But since you guys were asking for it, I wanted to go over this. A lot of people out there are saying they're underwhelmed by the Druid, and I definitely did feel that way myself, and still do to a degree. However, once you hit 25 and you start getting your build set up, with a few legendaries to combine together, you can become insanely powerful. So here you can see on the screen now the build very quickly if you just want to take the modifiers and the skills and go. But I'll go over the skills real quick, and then we'll run through a dungeon on Veteran, the highest world tier available to us, and you can see it for yourself how strong it is. It's particularly good against crowds of enemies, but if there's a single boss as well, the tornadoes are insane. So let's go over the skill tree so you can build it for yourself. And remember guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe, because it really does help, and it lets YouTube know that we exist when you click that like button. So thank you so much if you support the channel by hitting like. So to begin with, for our basic attack for our builder, we're going with Storm Strike. You've been playing a bit of Druid, this will be no surprise to you, but literally out of all of these builders, this one is by far the best in my opinion. Not only is it a damaging move that arcs to nearby enemies, it also gives you 25% damage reduction when you hit with it, and it seems to just build and generate spirit faster than any of the other moves, which is really, really good. But on top of this, the two upgrades that we want to get is a 15% chance to immobilize enemies hit, and remember it arcs to 3 surrounding enemies. And then the next one actually makes a 50% chance to make them vulnerable, which is really high. So pretty much every 2 hits, they're kind of like statistically guaranteed to be vulnerable, but it is a bit RNG. But generally everything you fight is vulnerable, which means you're dealing more damage. And this is super important because it's great for your party to make things vulnerable, but later on there are perks that will make us deal even more damage because of this. So not only are we immobilizing, we're making them vulnerable, and we're buffing ourselves with damage reduction. This is by far the best builder, so Storm Strike is our pick here. Then for the next tree, we've actually got quite a few passives here, but these pay off so well. We put 1 point in Heart of the Wild for 3 more maximum spirit, but this is only so we can get the next 2 perks. Abundance giving us 30% more basic skills generating spirit. So basically, our already very good generator is now generating 30% more spirit. It's huge, it's needed, this is really good. And then Wild Impulses, again 3 points maxed out, makes our core skill, which is our tornado, we'll get to that in a sec, cost 15% more spirit, but deal 30% more damage. That's a huge damage increase for only 15% more spirit, so these two together are really good. We're generating more, then we're using more, but we're dealing even more damage. Then we're going to max out Tornado. This is our damage dealer, and this is so powerful. I've only gone for the first upgrade, and you want this as well, because that 20% chance basically means you cast 2 at the same time, which is brilliant. The other upgrades just make them slowed or be vulnerable, and we already are going to be making them vulnerable with our Storm Strike, so we don't actually need to upgrade it anymore. But getting this maxed out, and then gear pieces, like I have got up to 6 with a gear piece, but if you can get higher, even better, is brilliant. And I'll show you my legendaries as well that synergize with this even more and make it even more overpowered. But yeah, we want to max out Tornado. This is going to be our main source of damage, and it's really, really strong. In the next set of skills, we're only going for Earthen Bulwark. This is a really good barrier. It's just really handy. It makes you more survivable. And also this first point will allow you to basically become unstoppable when you activate it, which means when you get CC'd or frozen, if this is off cooldown, you can pop it and you will break that CC because you're unstoppable. So it's just a good sort of quality of life skill, and the barrier is really handy because Storm Strike is a melee hit, so we will be in melee range of enemies. So we are really grateful to be having that Earthen Bulwark, and there's a really good legendary perk as well that will improve this even further, which we'll show you in a minute. For these next ones, we're not going for anything down here. All of these companion skills, we're not actually going to be going for them for this build. You can take wolves if you have the legendary that converts the wolves into werewolves and boosts their damage, and the other legendary that gives you an additional wolf companion. If you have those, great, you can put 1 point in here and run that. But if you want to go purely for tornadoes like I have, then you can skip all of these skills together. But down here is where it gets interesting. You can see there's a lot of passive skills that we've got in as well. But for the active, we are taking Hurricane, and I'll explain why when you read these passives. But Hurricane is really good. It does an AoE around us. You can see it like here. It will just channel this AoE around us and tick enemies like crazy. and it synergizes with these passives, which I'll show you here. So 1 point in elemental exposure, which will make basically all of our storm skills, and we have quite a lot of them here, have a chance to make enemies vulnerable. We're already applying vulnerability. This is just another on top of that, and it lets us get further into this perk tree. So 1 point here. 1 point into charged atmosphere. Every 18 seconds, we do 244 lightning damage to a nearby enemy. I find this skill's a bit strange. It actually hits a lot more often than 18 seconds, but I've only gone for 1 point because we're in the beta. We have limited points. I've tried to optimize for the highest damage where possible, but more points in this is good too. We've got 1 point in electric shock, which basically gives us a 5% chance to immobilize enemies. If they're already immobilized, then we get 5% more damage. Just the 1 point in that. Again, I'd go higher if I had more points because it goes up to 15%. But because we are immobilizing things with our basic attack, this is pretty good. It will basically be just extra damage as well. But then we want to max out Bad Omen because that gives us a 30% chance when dealing damage to vulnerable enemies, which again, they are always vulnerable because of this perk up here. They literally are always vulnerable. Or immobilize, sorry, which again, we have other things that immobilize as well. You can see up here, this immobilizes too. So whenever they are vulnerable, immobilized, or stunned, we do a lightning strike to them that does just about 300 damage. And because they're always like that, we always have this 30% chance to lightning strike them. It gets a bit mental. And we have other lightning strikes as well with our items. So the gist of this build is we're hitting things, we're arcing to enemies, we're making them vulnerable, we're doing AoEs around us with Hurricane, we've got Cataclysm, which we'll get to in a sec, which is more AoEs. We're spamming these tornadoes that will seek out enemies with our legendary item, does huge damage, and we're just constantly calling down lightning on things. And so for our final skill, we have Cataclysm, like we just mentioned, which is basically just a huge AoE lightning damage storm ability. It all synergizes with these passives here, with Hurricane, and with our Storm Strike, and with our Tornado as well, being a Storm skill. So there's so much synergy here. If we had more skill points, we could push these perks further, and we could potentially even go into Nature's Reach, because the Tornadoes can go far away. So that's more raw damage on Nature's Reach as well, but we don't have the skill points, so I've tried to optimize it as best I can. Maybe it can be optimized a little bit more, but generally, prioritize maxing out Tornado is the #1 thing to do. So let's move on to our legendary items real quick, because there's a couple that will be vital and others that will be just really good and improve your damage massively. Some of the ones I have on my gear are kind of like just because they're the only things I had, but we'll go through each piece and I'll explain why. So our head gives us a barrier when we're fighting elites, just a bit more survivability. It's a nice one to have, not needed for the build though. For our chest, we have the Earthen Bulwark upgrade, which gives it 6 more seconds. By default, it has 3, so that makes it 9-second barrier. That's a huge buff. And Earthen skills replenish the barrier. We don't have any other Earthen skills than the barrier itself, so we don't use that. But the 6-second increase is massive for us. Then for our gloves, we have a 16% chance to deal, when we deal lightning damage to enemies, to overload them, which makes them pulse 322 damage to additional enemies. Now for the lightning damage, our builder, which we will be using a lot, does lightning damage, and our cataclysm does lightning damage. So this 16% chance happens more often than you would think, because we use those, particularly that we use the builder a lot, and we use this pretty much off cooldown when we're fighting a group of enemies. For the next one though, this is a Cyclone Armor skill. It's the only one I had for this slot, so literally you could swap this for anything better. We don't really use that perk. For the legs, again, just another, this was the best legs I had. For the weapon though, we have a really nice perk here. So when we cast a Storm ability, it makes our Earth skills have 75% critical strike damage, which we don't use. But the second part, when we cast an Earth skill, which is our Earthen Bulwark, we now get 20% crit strike chance for our Storm skills. So every time we pop this barrier, which is basically every time it's off cooldown, we get 4 seconds of every single other skill we have, including our Tornadoes, having 20% more crit strike chance, which is pretty good and makes them crit quite often. I think I have a base crit chance of about 12% here, so that brings us to like 32% crit chance, which synergizes with our next item, which is here, critical strikes with storm skills. So again, this is giving us crit strike chance on storm skills. Cause the air around you to charge for 1.7 seconds, causing a lightning strike to periodically hit enemies for 440 damage. This is really good, but 1.7 seconds sounds lackluster. However, the bottom part says the duration is extended by additional crit strikes. And what we have to understand is that Tornado, as well as Cataclysm, as well as Hurricane, all are constantly ticking and hitting things around you. So you will hit critical strikes so often that this perk has 100% uptime for the dungeon. It's absolutely mental. And remember, we're already calling lightning strikes down with one of our perks from the tree here. Where is it? Every 18 seconds. So we're just constantly bringing lightning down. It's really, really powerful. So these two skills together will just improve your DPS massively. So you want them, but the only one that you actually need for the build is this skill here. Tornadoes seek up to 8 targets. So normally the tornadoes just go off randomly, but with this skill, they actually target and seek enemies, and this is a huge, huge part of it. So you need this skill. It makes tornado go from like 50 to 150. It's insane. This is a really good skill. And for my final ring, this is also another good one to have. It just makes my basic attacks build up to 50% more damage for my core skill, which is the tornado. So as I'm building to hit tornadoes, I'm building up to 50% more damage on that tornado. So there's quite a few synergies here. And don't get me wrong, there's other builds you can make with really good synergies, like there's several of these earth ones that can basically make you deal really high damage with one of the earthen moves. There's also these pulverized skills that are really good. Pulverize is a great skill as well. And then outside of that, there's quite a few different ones that affect shred, as you can see here. But in my... Oh, and the companion ones as well, which are really cool, but the werewolf one is needed for the companion build. However, for what I have available to me and having tested out these other items, tornado is where it's at. So we're going to run in a dungeon, and you guys can see for yourselves how powerful this is. And again, we're on veteran world tier, the highest world tier available. I'm level 25, and so all the mobs in here are going to be level 25. I'm going to kill all of the mobs as we go through. Normally I would just run to the elites, but we'll just kill everything so you can see the sort of clear time on how this all functions. And there's a bit of a sort of ramp up as you're spamming the tornadoes, but you'll see how it is. Let's round together some mobs and get some damage out. So we use our bulwark, and then you can see we have this high crit chance. You can see we've already got this lightning aura. The more enemies that are around us that we can basically crit, the more that lightning aura will last in terms of its duration. And we just kill everything. It's pretty fire and forget with those tornadoes as well, because they seek out enemies. So since we're going to be here for a second, we can pop our Cataclysm. You can see that the thing's already dead. Elites die super fast when they're the only thing around, because our tornadoes will seek out additional enemies. But as you can see, it's already dead. I'll pick up these rares because I can salvage them for more imprints later. So it's a really, really fun build. You're really tanky, you're really survivable, and you have tons of damage. The lightning strikes just hit everything around you for free, so you don't actually have to run up to any of the objects in the world. We got a channeling shrine, not bad. Channeling shrine's kind of nuts for us because we can just spam tornadoes. But you don't even need it, as you saw before on that other one. You know, let's get 2 elites there, because with the channeling shrine, we can just go nuts with tornadoes. Just literally kills everything for us. Our Cataclysm is back up as well. Let's look for the next quest objective. You see, I'm really having no trouble. I'm literally just running through, face tanking. It's really not a problem. This is a powerful Druid build. And I totally get why people felt that the Druid was lackluster in those early levels. It was a bit of a rough leveling experience, don't get me wrong, and I hope that they do buff it, particularly the werewolf and werebear form. But for the magic, the tornado is definitely dealing the damage that I want it to and killing things as fast as I want it to. I mean, like I said before, we killed the world boss. I literally didn't die, was constantly outputting damage with the lightning strikes just always coming down around you. You're always hitting that world boss as well. You just have to sort of be nearby, but obviously hitting it and spamming the tornadoes will dramatically increase your like DPS output as well. But it's pretty much just run through, get to the elite or the mission, target, pop your bulwark, do your builder, shoot out tornadoes, everything dies. You have permanent lightning strikes around you just all the time. Easy damage, easy wins, easy farming, easy loot. There's still a couple more legendaries that I'm yet to get, like the one that turns the wolves into werewolves. That is what I'm farming for. If we get it in this dungeon, I'll be ecstatically happy, because I've been farming for hours for it and we just didn't get it. But I'm having quite a blast playing Druid. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I kind of wanted it to be more about permanent shapeshifting and having different abilities when you're a werewolf to when you're a werebear. It kind of turned out to be more close to the barbarian in terms of the shape-shifting moves just being skills that transform you for a couple seconds, and then you transform back, and it's just really a skill, kind of like how on Barbarian the different skills with the different weapons just switch weapons for the skill. And I was hoping the forms would be more unique and have more depth to them, if that makes sense, because that's what I was most excited for when choosing to play Druid. But what it turns out is the magic is where it's at for Druid. You can just literally go nuts with tornadoes and all of the lightning strikes. There's so much synergy, and there's so many unique legendary items for the Druid. Was actually pretty surprised when I was playing Sorcerer. Although there were some, there wasn't that many, and I've been playing Druid, and I've literally already got a whole line of uniques here, as well as the uniques here in my aspects. It's insane. There's so many unique things for Druid. And I think even though the leveling was rough, I think that actually the high level for Druid will be a lot better because of all of that synergy that it has with all these legendaries. So I'm quite hopeful for what the Druid can be, but a little disappointed initially. However, with this build, it's made it not just playable, but powerful. And I was definitely able to clear content even on 4-person scale dungeons and take down the bosses, which I was very, very happy with. Ooh, a little chest. Another rare. I think as well, it's quite a simple playstyle, you know. It's a melee ranged build. It's high damage. It's survivable. And I do quite enjoy seeing the tornadoes, the RNG of them, of spawning 2 at once, seeing them track down enemies and all of that kind of stuff. But again, I do hope that there is a bit more depth in the shape-shifting forms, because I would really like to make a really good werewolf, particularly werewolf shapeshifter build. But right now, with the legendaries I have, and how much damage I'm doing with this tornado build, I just don't think I'm gonna swap unless I can make an equally as powerful build for the shape-shifting abilities, which I'm yet to see or find. But yeah, we're pretty much about to finish this dungeon. I think the boss is gonna spawn on us in a second. Here we go, here's the boss. And instead, it's just instant death. Dungeon cleared. Veteran difficulty, solo with Druid, which again everyone is saying is underpowered, but at least with this build, I'm just shredding things and just face rolling content. It's super easy mode. So if you guys enjoyed this sort of impressions and my Druid build that I've made, then let me know what you think in the comments, and do share any other Druid tips that you have down in the comments below. Thank you for watching, everyone. I hope you're having a fantastic day. And the 2 videos on screen now, we think you'll really enjoy if you did enjoy this one. Of course, you don't have to watch these videos if you don't want to, but if you did enjoy this video, you're probably going to like these ones too. And make sure to tell us what you think after watching in the comments down below.